You can edit it like in little bits.
I probably will have to anyway. I'll have to edit every time one of us says Final Fantasy instead of Fighting Fantasy, which I can't understand why I keep doing it because I hate Final Fantasy games. Don't have any nostalgia for them, and yet Fighting Fantasy got me through both moving away from every friend I ever had and my parents' divorce in the space of 5 years. You'd think that would have had a more of an impact on my life in terms of being able to remember how to say it properly.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because Ian Livingstone, because obviously he's sort of Eidos, who are also Square Enix as well. So I'm sure the FF thing comes up quite a lot with him as well.
In board meetings now, yeah. Just I like how your new Final Fantasy book's going, Ian.
Yeah, a glare across the table.
An embarrassing silence. Ian's sweaty head just getting more and more sweaty.
He's a legend, though. I mean, to think from what he started from to what he is now, as like one of the most influential voices in British games, and yet to a select group of book-loving nerds from the 80s, he was famous for something far greater and far more kind of memorable.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because like him and Steve, they were the first guys in the UK to license D&D. Like they got hold of this game called Dungeons and Dragons that nobody else knew about, and I can't remember what the numbers were, but I think they got the license to sell 6 copies in the UK or some weird little stat like that. And if you think about it, D&D in its essence of what it is the kind of birthing of pretty much quite a lot of RPG stuff. Really, it's the thing that everything is sort of built off of. So, in the same way that like Tolkien is like the birth of, fantasy writing, in a way they should be held up in a higher regard in that way. And which I don't think people realise that, what they did for the UK especially.
We need to push for that. There's that classic Darwinian monkey transforming into Homo sapien. Homo erectus.
I'm worried where you were going with that for a second, given our earlier conversation.
Can I get away with erectus? Is that okay?
I think you can get away with that. Yeah.
We need some sort of visual chronology in portrait against a light background, just showing a TSL product. It's a British one, maybe a little stack of Final Fantasy books, and that's a purpose. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Through to and then back on ourselves through to what we're here to discuss today.
This is the Bantersnatch.
Well, anyway, I suppose we better kick this off then. Are we all comfortable? We're all sitting appropriately? We're all...
I thought it started.
Well, we sort of... I will use that. But
right. Okay.
I haven't actually officially said welcome to the Bantersnatch or anything, so I'll have to get that bit done. I've been playing with the Blood Zombies app while we've been talking.
You're not allowed to have it open.
I am. I can reference it nicely. I unlocked the jigsaw. Got all the jigsaw pieces today, so I was quite pleased because I got that extra little bit of art, which I was quite pleased with. It's quite a nice image.
Yeah, we were wondering what to do with that image because Ian sent it to me and he said, I'd love you to use this piece of artwork that didn't make it into the final book. And it's Martin McKenna as well, who's a bit of a art legend for Final Fantasy. So we were trying to think of a good way of doing it. So literally I went back through the book and I just kind of planted these like art canvas pieces, jigsaw pieces around just to add that in. And I think that's a really cool achievement because I don't think it's quite hard to get that, I think. So well done.
I only got that just from playing the game. From the point of view of somebody that loved the books, it's very hard. I mean, I know when the license was with the last group of people that did it. I forget their name now, but they never really felt like the books I remembered, and that was the one concern I had going into this was how much will it kind of recapture that vibe for what we had. But having that classic mode, I haven't played it in full color or anything else. I've just been hardcore, old school, like faded edge pages. And
nice.
I think you're missing out on a lot by playing it in classic. I've played the both. I haven't completed the game. That's just silly. But I think you're missing out a lot. Seriously, you need to.
When I finished it,
you just stop being an old curmudgeon and get into 2012.
Well, the option was there. If you're going to give me the option to experience it like I wanted to experience it when I was a kid.
I downloaded Bard's Tale for iPad, and I started because I used to get through that. That dominated my childhood. All 3 versions. Bard's
Tale 2 was a glorious little game.
It was, and I think the key word there is was, and I fired up the classic version, and it was hard work, and you kind of forget if you don't keep yourself up to date with these vintage games and kind of play them on your PC and so on. I think you just lose track of. I think obviously games and user interfaces have changed a hell of a lot in the last 20, 30 years or whatever, and this is I think. Blood of the Zombies has the best bits from back in the day, but you're certainly missing a treat by not playing it in 2012 mode.
Yeah, it's nice you say that actually, because obviously, when we're designing these things, I'm constantly, juggling the expectations of my expectations of people that remember the books from when they were kids in the 80s and 90s, and then the modern gamers of now and what's expected on an iPad. So that's good feedback, because that means I feel like we're kind of doing okay, because we want to kind of get that nostalgic feel, but at the same time it has to be worth your money, and it has to look a bit gorgeous on your new iPad with your Retina screen. So. But and also we want to keep that feeling of fight, because Fighting Fantasy has a certain feel to it. All the books, there's tons of different game books that came out in the 80s, which were all very good in different ways. But there's something about those green-spined Fighting Fantasy books on your bookshelf that just kind of there's something a bit magical about them. And so that's one of the things that we've tried very hard to achieve, and I think we got it. I think we did okay there, So
yeah, I mean, as an interactive experience compared to the horrible PlayStation Death Trap Dungeon game, which just took every bit of nostalgia I had going into it, pulled out in front of me, shot it, left it bleeding to death on the carpet while I just sat there aghast at what had happened. As somebody that grew up with games and is always a kind of a big fan of stuff coming back, like Toe Jam and Earl 1 and 2 have just been launched on the Xbox today, and I'm super excited about going through those again. And part of me always thinks, do I want them polished up? Do I want them to look a lot nicer on the Xbox? Or do I want that experience exactly as I had it originally? And sometimes that works brilliantly, and sometimes it completely falls flat on its face as a result. And obviously going into an adventure game book, there's a lot of scope for how you can handle it, really. Because you can kind of go in and, like you were saying, do you weight it one way? Do you weight it another? Do you give an option or not for how people can go into it? And actually, by having that option, for me, it was always a no-brainer. If there was an option to play it like those old books, that's the way I would prefer to go, because that's going to help me tap into that old feeling. And as a result, I've now bought about 20 of the books again, because all mine were given away by my mother when I moved out. And never quite forgiven her. I've not given her a decent Christmas present ever since. But yeah, I had a box of the first 50, and then a few after that, because obviously they were slightly harder to get after that. So I think I had probably about another 4 on top of that. And then it says she got rid of all of those. She got rid of all my Beano and Dan Daniels, got rid of all of my games consoles, got rid of my Spectrum, got rid of my Acorn Electron in 3 loads to a jumble sale. And when I said, did you get a lot for them? She went, I think they just went 10p a piece. I was like, no. You could have at least said you sold them for a fair price. I could have thought, well, that's helped a charity out. And instead, it was just a jumble sale for some miserable old people that priced them up wrong. So I never quite got over it.
I think your mum was just trying to do you a favour. This probably sounds like it was like last month, and she was just fed up with you not getting into 2012.
Yeah, if only. It's going to cost her now, because I've guilt tripped her and she'll buy me a load for Christmas as well. I was like, look, these ones next, these ones. She tried to buy me the new release paper copies with a silver shield logo. I was like, don't you dare. If it's not got a yellow logo on the front, I don't want it. And obviously you can go back a bit earlier, and they didn't have that so much.
I was going to say, technically, that's old school, so you need,
I like the ones where they had like the dragon title for the names and the yellow logo. I like that when they had that look. I'm not such a fan of the green zigzags.
Oh, right.
Just as a visual thing. I think because the ones that I had most of were that design.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so the ones with the old design, generally I only read from libraries. And so they always felt a bit older. And of course, when they did the anniversary of Firetop Mountain, it had the original, like proper kind of painted artworky thing. I was like, oh, I quite like that. That looks quite nice.
I guess we're digressing a little bit we're moving into fandom rather than concentrating on why we're here.
Well, I haven't done the intro yet, so we're okay.
Should we do that?
Should we do that? I
feel like I'm in a prequel.
You are. You're actually what this is. This is like Memento. We've done the end. Right. We're slowly working our way back to the beginning.
So that's why I've got this tattoo on my arm, right?
It says, "Don't go on Skype." Stay on Skype. What's this mean? What is this? Who is this? Oh, excuse me.
It's going well, isn't it?
I just stuck a safety pin in my leg, which was also to the intro.
So Neil, how long have you got? Because this intro is going to take a little while.
Right. Okay. Here we go. So, hello there. Bouncybhall here, and you're listening to the Lolocaust Bantersnatch.
Bantersnatch.
This is the Bantersnatch.
Awesome. Candace.
Joining me tonight, we have Dr. Hamhock for the very first time with his own voice.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. Are you excited as much as I am excited?
I'm excited and overjoyed by that introduction. It's wonderful.
Well, never mind the introduction. Have you seen who's over there?
Oh, yeah.
Well, hello.
Yeah, we got a special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself, special guest?
Hello, my name's Neil, and I am the Tin Man from Tin Man Games.
Yeah, he's the Tin Man, and he's got a tin car.
It's the Tin Tank, actually.
Or is it a tin tank? Oh,
yeah.
Look at that. That's quite good, though. It means I'm not that stalkery. I haven't compiled a little reference guide to you to sit down. But yeah, hello, and welcome to the Lolocaust Bantersnatch.
Hello.
Very good to speak to you. And obviously, any of you listening, you might think, oh, Tin Man, what are they on about? Is this some sort of Wizard of Oz reference again? Has Bouncy got his red shoes on and dressed up like Judy Garland? No. Tin Man, they make special kind of app things related to adventure game books.
Indeed.
I think that covers it, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's what we do. That's what we've mainly been doing for the last few years, yeah.
Yeah, that's well, it's definitely what we're going to be talking about mostly.
Woohoo!
So that's good. And obviously, Hamhock and I, we're huge fans of a very, very good range of books from the 80s that we both read, which were fighting fantasy. And you've recently brought out one of those, the new Blood of the Zombies by Ian Livingstone. You've brought out an app with that.
Yes, we have.
He says clumsily.
That was amazing. You can edit this out, but that was the most amazing intro I've ever heard.
Yeah,
you've done us proud. That was amazing. It was going so well up until that point.
We'll keep that because what you've just done is you just saved it. You've pulled it back from the edge. That little It's funny. I've interviewed people before, but I've never actually really cared about what they do. And so there is a slight element of, I'm talking about fighting fantasy books. Ooh.
There's a route to you being on this show. And right. It's not convoluted at all. Bouncy went, hey, Andy, or Hock, have you seen the new Fighting Fantasy app that's out? And I'm like, well, no. What are you talking about? And all of a sudden, my heart started pounding and I started getting a little bit excited. I said, "Oh no, Blood of the Zombies. It's on the Apple Store." I was like, "Is it?" Because only a week before, I'd gone into the Chiswick Games Workshop with another friend. I have more than one friend. I went into the Games Workshop, asked the sales
I'm just surprised there's a Games Workshop in Chiswick.
Well, it's kind of Hammersmith, Chiswick, and being the birthplace of Games Workshop as well, of course, where their first store was, you'd think they'd have about 5 or 6 stores. But anyway, I walked in there and with a friend who was dead into Fighting Fantasy.
You did it.
And I was explaining to him that there was a new paper book out. A week before the conversation about the digital version, and I walked into the store and I was like, "Hi, have you got the new Fighting Fantasy book?" And there was a little bit of glaze. He went, "I'm sorry. Have you got the new Fighting Fantasy book? The Ian Livingstone. He's kind of from round here, and you should know this." I don't know what you're talking about. Well, at that moment, I felt a little old and a little stupid. was surrounded by a couple of dads and about 10 children, and a manager who didn't know what I was talking about when I was referencing a former Games Workshop product and a Ian Livingstone product. At that point, we entered into a discussion about other books, other board games, and I kind of sheepishly walked out. And that's where I completely forgot about it. I thought, well, I'll just have to pick it up online at Amazon or whatever and buy it. And then this man introduced me to your wonderful, wonderful product.
Woohoo!
There you go.
I hope I'm right in assuming you were a fan of the books yourself when you were a little one.
Yeah, totally. Like when I was about 9 or 10, I think we used to go on some family holidays down to the south coast, and as it does in the UK, it used to rain a lot, so I used to go down to a bookshop and spend some pennies, and in there was this glorious book called Death Trap Dungeon with this horrible creature on the front with lots of eyes, and I brought that back to the camper van as the rain hailed down on the roof and tucked into it, and yeah, it changed my young brain forever.
So what about you, Hock? What was your first? Do you remember your first fighting fantasy book?
Yeah, I do actually. It was Cavern or Caverns of the Snow Witch.
I think it was Caverns. I think.
Yeah, Caverns.
Yeah. It wasn't one of the first ones.
That was the one with the sort of strangled orc on the front.
It was a pretty terrifying cover. It had a little bit of the Hoth cave scene to it, I think, if I remember. And some woman. It was a witch, wasn't it? Of course, on the front cover, like a terrifying looking beast. So, showing her ultimate power, which is very nice.
She was in like a crystal ball or something, wasn't she? If I remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I always thought it was a helmet with like one of those medieval kind of Edwardian kind of neck kind of decorations until I was a little bit older and I realised what was going on. Until I actually paid attention to the book.
So she was dressed up like Will Smith and Kevin Kline off of Wild Wild West.
Well, that was
wiki wow wow.
That was the first. I think that was like, I don't know, book 6 or 7 or 8 or something. I don't know, maybe even later. And then you kind of start, and then there's a bit of a dynamic at school, and you kind of all swapping books, and you buy your own. And I know how much they were from Games Workshop because I've got books with me from Games Workshop with a Games Workshop sticker on which say $1.99.
Wow.
So there you go, 199 pennies for those books new back in the day. If you compare that to the app price, I feel
it's actually not that much different, really, is it?
well, it's not at all. Actually, I think if you look at the change in currency rates from 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, look at how much a Mars bar costs more now.
And the Mars bars.
Mars bars.
Here we go.
Bloody hell, 80p for a Mars bar. They were 20p in my shop, and they should never have gone above that. How dare they?
I'm sure. I wonder if they get emails like I do, going, "Ooh, I'm not buying you. You're still more expensive than Angry Birds."
But yeah, I mean, with me, because I'm hosting, so I can't really ask myself ASD. But the first one I read was Forest of Doom.
Hey, Bancy.
What?
What was the first book that you read?
The first book or the first fighting fantasy book?
Well, as we're talking about Final Fantasy books, maybe you can, as we're talking about fighting fantasy books, what was the first fighting fantasy book you read?
Well, as you'll probably know, because I just said it, it was Forest of Doom. And again, I was attracted by the idea of like a lizardy man wearing clothes. I couldn't work out why he wore clothes.
Stepping over a log.
Yeah, he was like ripping through his clothes. I thought, well, that's not designed for you. So then I thought, well, has he been turned into that lizardy man? Or has he stolen that from some poor bloke who's hung his coat up while he had a swim in a river? And then I realised that I should probably just read the book and stop trying to just judge a book by its cover. And
although this is while we're trying to interview Neil and just talking over him for the whole process.
Good, continue. I'm fine. I'm sat here drinking wine. I'm happy.
It is a very good point because back in the day when I was buying the books and buying Titan, the kind of compendium of the history and the world and so on, I didn't used to buy it for the content. I used to look at the cover and just stare in awe at it and kind of flick through it, look at the pictures, and then go, "Oh, that looks brilliant," and buy it. This Blood of the Zombies is the first fighting fantasy book I've bought, not based on the cover artwork.
But then it has got amazing cover artwork.
Yeah,
let's not avoid it. And actually on the app, even more so, because it's moving. Yes, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, look at that. That hand. Just it could get you.
Isn't he a bit scary?
It's a good way of bringing it together. You know.
Have you got it on the main menu at the moment? Have you?
I have it on the main menu right now.
Can you hear him growling, grunting?
That's exactly it. Yes.
Nice.
I thought for a moment, oh my god, I haven't turned the sound on my iPad. What's going on here?
Well,
I thought you had a kill switch. You could just make it suddenly attack me remotely.
I was going to play. I was actually going to play the kind of lurchy sound that when he bursts. I was going to play that sound effect every time you talked about a spoiler of some sort over the course of the interview.
Oh, we won't really be hitting spoilers because I haven't finished the book yet, so I don't think that's a concern just yet. I mean, there's a few references we're going to have to make that may be considered spoilers, but I think that actually they're cunning appetizers.
Yeah,
that will
I agree.
Somebody's appetite to want to go and get it, because obviously there are a lot of people out there who would have not read these books, particularly people that have kind of spoiled little kids, like 15-year-old kids that have got an iPad because they wanted one, and they might be looking at it and thinking, oh, well, I like zombies and blood makes zombies cool, so might give it a go. And actually it could be a gateway into the world kind of backwards as well, but obviously for us it's the step to the future, and a step that we are quite pleased to take us. So, Neil, would you like to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the world of fighting fantasy?
Oh, wow. Well, it's kind of a bizarre story, really. So, obviously, I was a big fan, and spent a lot of time with them in my youth, and I played a lot of D&D when I was in my early teens, and so I was always been a big fan of RPGs. And so roll on many numbers of years, university degrees and various starting companies. I've worked in the games industry for over 10 years and made a bit of money doing some 3D art outsourcing, working on games like Need for Speed and stuff like that for companies like EA. And I wanted to start my own company. I'd just moved to Australia. And so me and a guy started a little indie development company. The first game we made was rubbish. It was a little.
Is that the title? Is it? Or...
Yeah. No, the title of the game's Fruit Trees. Go and buy it. It's only $1. But it was a bit of a test to see, whether you could make money on the App Store. It was the early days of the iPhone. The iPhone had just come out. The iPad hadn't even been announced, and we were still seeing what we could do, and it didn't sell anything. We lost lots of money very quickly. So I had to kind of think, what the hell can I do to actually make a career out of this? Have my own company that's actually making games that are making enough money so I can feed myself and my family. So I kind of thought, well, what did I really enjoy as a kid, which isn't really available now? And so the fighting fantasy books were, sort of jumped out at me. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be great on an iPhone? That'd be fantastic, because fighting fantasy books really were the first portable games. Like, you've got your Nintendo DSs, etc. now and your iPhones, but really FF books, when you went on holiday, you took up 2 or 3 of them in the back of the car and read them, on the way to wherever you're going to. So I thought, hey, that would be really great. So we started creating our own thing called Game Book Adventures, and we got a load of writers together, and we actually set the stories within a fantasy world that I created 20 years ago when I used to run my D&D games. I literally went up to my parents' loft and pulled down an old box full of old maps and bits of rubbish that I'd written when I was like 12 or 13, and actually set all the books in that. And we slowly but surely got a bit of funding from Film Victoria in Melbourne, which helped us. And we started putting these apps together and creating our own sort of our own fighting fantasy / Lone Wolf / other classic game book series. It was our own. At the time, about 6 months into it, Big Blue Bubble had got the fighting fantasy license. I'd actually inquired into it and been told that it had been given to somebody else. So I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. We'll just develop our own brand and just make it kick ass and awesome. And we slowly built up a fan base. We weren't making mega bucks, but we were just about getting by with a bit of funding. And then about a year and a half ago, I moved back to the UK from Australia because we were having our second child and we wanted to have our kid over here in the UK. And I wandered down to an event called Dragon Meet in London, which is kind of like an RPG fair. There's loads of stalls and stuff. And I knew that Ian Livingstone was going to be down there. And he just passed by, and he'd obviously been had a bit of an eye on us and been watching us for quite a while. And we got chatting, and yeah, he told me about Blood of the Zombies, and he kind of inquired originally about doing the Android versions because Big Blue Bubble still had the license then, and I was like, yeah, no, sure, because we were just about to get all our Game Book Adventures stuff onto Android, and then obviously as time went on, Big Blue Bubble didn't want to renew their license with the Fighting Fantasy deal, so we obviously then took on the iOS stuff as well, and then the next thing I know, I'm having regular phone calls with one of the heroes of my youth and swapping emails with Steve Jackson and then a few months later it was the UK Games Expo, and we were swapping contracts right there and then on the show floor, and it was very bizarre, very strange. But
when did
really
it get
cool.
to the point when you stopped saving the emails you were getting from Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone because they were becoming a little bit run of the mill?
Quite a while ago. I must admit, actually, I did, keep a few by, and now, like, if I go into my sent items and I type in Ian Livingstone, it like comes up with hundreds of emails, because I'm obviously keeping in contact with him all the time. So yeah, it doesn't. I still get a little bit excited, I must admit, when Ian or Steve email me.
There was a moment about 4 or 5 months ago when I was on the Hammersmith and City line, and Ian got on, and I recognised his face because he'd been collecting BAFTAs here, there, and everywhere, and he sat opposite me, and I kind of shat myself, if I can say that word. And for about 20 minutes, I sat there just kind of staring awkwardly at him until he got off. Which was the most miserable, which then started the most miserable day of my life.
Because you wish you'd have spoken to him, right?
I wish I had the balls to speak to him, yeah.
Oh, he'd have been really chuffed, though, because he's the sort of guy that if you'd have sort of said, I'm a Fighting Fantasy fan, he'd have probably chatted to you quite
That's
happily.
interesting.
Yeah. So rub it in.
Keep going.
I haven't got a story where I've met or spoke to either. I'm a bit disappointed.
Well, neither have I. That's the joke.
Sat opposite you.
I stared at him.
That's the same as standing next to him in a cubicle in a toilet. Almost, isn't it? That's the way it goes. All I can do is I beat Peter Schultz in a penalty shootout.
So, no, you did you not race online against Sterling Moss?
I did, yeah. I did ram Sterling Moss off the track on Forza 2. That was the highlight. So yeah, all right. But it's still not Ian Livingstone, is it? Come on, legend or not, it's not somebody that grew up that. If it had been Ayrton Senna, which obviously wouldn't have been likely, but that would have been somebody from my childhood who I really think. Or if I'd like shaved off Nigel Mansell's moustache, something like that may have been a similar thing. But
still got that moustache, incidentally. I don't know.
Is that, sorry, what?
Have he still got the moustache or not?
I don't think he has. I know last time I saw him he hadn't, but
he got rid of it and looked like a newborn baby for a while.
He looked like Kevin Webster from Coronation Street when he shaved his off, and everybody like, who is that? Who is that young actor they've got in to play Kevin Webster?
Who's that they've got in to play his top lip? It was just that kind of top lip glaring at us all over the television. Anyway,
it was the guy from the Joy of Sex books, wasn't it? That's who they got to do it. The hairiest man alive. All right, so there we go. We've covered the genesis of the project and through to its inception. So I suppose the obvious question at this point would be to say, obviously, what's the creative process like? I mean, is it a case of you're given the copy and then you kind of apply that to a system, or is it something where there is a bit of flexibility between the two? I mean, what sort of restrictions did they impose, or were they quite happy for you to kind of run wild with it, somewhat knowing obviously you were respectful of the source material?
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one because we've only released one app so far, so I've only got that to go off of at the minute. I know with Blood of the Zombies, it's a brand new project for Ian. He's been working, writing this book for a long time. It's a big deal because it's the 30th anniversary this year. So he's obviously a lot closer to it. He wrote it quite recently. So there was a lot of things that we needed to talk to him about to make sure that we were getting right. And it was very important to me to make sure that he was on side with a lot of our decisions and stuff. I mean, ultimately, the actual game book itself, the writing, we didn't change very much at all. It's pretty much how it is in the book. Mm. The only times we did change it is when we had to change it for logic and gameplay situations. So a good way of describing that is that when you're reading a game book, it puts a lot of trust in the reader or the player, whereas in a computer game, you have to take that trust away because you're automating things. So, for example, if you come to a room and it says, if you have the magic so and so, it means that in the next fight you deduct 2 from their damage or whatever. In the book, what you do, that would all be in one section, and you'd be able to kind of sit, as the reader, you'd be honest and you'd do the battle to whatever it said. But in an app, you can't. You have to kind of pass the player through an almost a portal of a decision. Have you got this thing or have you not got this thing? In order to change the stats for the following battle, depending on whether you have or you haven't. So
that's absolutely one of the beauties of your app versus the paper versions, because the paper versions I never played properly. I used to play D&D. I used to Games Master and get involved with role-playing games quite a bit. But with the fighting fantasy books, I just couldn't be bothered. I just wanted to enjoy the story and just basically cheat my way through it. Still take the decisions, and if I died, go back to the last number, remember it, and then play it on that way. I know it's different to how Bouncy used to, because he's a bit of a purist, a bit of an old school purist, as we already know. But the app, that really gives me a sense of insecurity, and that lovely safe cheat haven that I have with the paper books is taken away from me. Now I'm looking at the dice, willing the dice to roll right for me, and I'm being a lot more. I'm looking a lot more in detail at the environment, making sure I check doors and cupboards and bags, and trying to get as much kit as possible. I'm not whizzing through it as I used to, and it's given me a different experience. And I didn't think I would have the patience for it, but it's got me. It's absolutely grabbing me, because I feel like I'm under threat. I feel like I'm going to die. Whereas previously I was like, well, if I die, I'll just go back. It's fine. I'm not going to worry too much. And that's the great thing about the digital version of it, because I'm a big cheat. That's it, basically.
Oh, it's good you say that, because again, that's another thing that we kind of another dilemma. What do you do? Because traditionally, most of us used to cheat these books. Right? We didn't play them properly. So, but with the computer game version, you need to have that kind of. You need to have that thing where you need to have these barriers in place to make it compelling. Otherwise, it just becomes I don't know. You're just reading a posh PDF. Otherwise, really.
Yeah.
So we sort of and ahed on what to do about that. And one of the things I thought we'd keep in there was keeping the old fingers in between the pages, which you do by placing bookmarks. And in our old Game Book Adventures apps, actually, we limited the bookmarks to 3 bookmarks for a whole book to make it really tough. But I felt that with Fighting Fantasy, we needed to kind of give people a little bit of a break and say, look, just use them as save points. It is the fingers between the pages, because everybody does that. And then obviously we go one step further as well. There is actually a cheat mode, which you've probably seen, which means you can go backwards. It means you can have unlimited health and various other things. So for the people that get either really pissed off with it, or they just want to cheat from the start, they've got that option too. So
you get that in regular video games, in that you get a flight mode, or you'll get a like Res, for example. You'll get that kind of mode where you can just enjoy the game and enjoy it, and not have to worry.
It's definitely something that, I mean, with my approach to when I was younger, of course I cheated. I wanted to get through the story, and if I died through something I genuinely felt was unfair, I'd suddenly just go, what else would have happened? And sometimes actually, if there was a roll of a dice and it would have 3 outcomes depending on what the dice roll was, I always kind of wanted to know what the other options were, and that curiosity was always there. Whereas with this one, I've kind of, as an adult now, I thought, well, I can't be like that. I'm not 12 anymore. I've got to approach this as a fully grown adult. I'm a fighting fantasy kind of master now. I should be able to walk. I'm not walking through it at all. I've realised actually how tough they were as they were, and this one even more so. I mean, I don't remember going up necessarily against the quantity of enemy that you find in Blood of the Zombies. There's certain points where, on kind of going back through it again, I've got to a bit where it's like, there's a trail of blood. Do you want to follow the trail of blood? I'm like, no, I haven't got a flak jacket. I know what's going to happen if I follow that trail of blood. Nothing. But if I don't follow it, I've then got to take on a whole load of dogs, both of which I haven't really got the health to struggle with. And that element actually of kind of panic and concern, I'm enjoying the book all the more because I'm having to be much more concise and make sure I keep a med pack with me in case I need to patch myself up because I've opened the wrong box and something's exploded in my face or whatever. And I'm actually enjoying it more as a result of that. But I'm really grateful as well that there is that kind of freedom mode, so I can then actually just go through and find maybe the 1 or 2 pages I wouldn't have seen because I went left at that corridor instead of right. And obviously the way these books always worked is sometimes there would be like a Lynch page, say like 150, we'd always get to page 150, passage 150. And so you might have 20 steps to get to that point, or you might have 3 steps to get to that point. But you always went through that kind of channel.
We call them bottlenecks in game book talk.
There you go. So so those bottlenecks. And obviously sometimes you can be unaware of how much you've missed by going left. You know, if you go, particularly for the first 3 times I went through, I never talked to the guys in the storeroom. So I never had a lot of background information. I just thought, run away.
It's a bit tough if you don't speak to those guys, isn't it?
It is. But again, because those books had kind of got me into the idea of, well, I'm in this castle, I've been kidnapped by these people. I haven't got a weapon, I need to get out. So I'd quickly run away. And so obviously made a rod for my own back. And then through experimentation and through trying to see what other possibilities were there, you kind of obviously some bits get easier, some bits don't. And
through experimentation, Bouncy realised that it's better to grab someone around the waist with their legs rather than around their head with their legs.
Yeah, I think that's I know the bit you're talking about there. That's an interesting scenario, that one, isn't it? Because that sort of stops things very quickly.
Obviously that's not your responsibility. It's not so much the narrative, but to help that along and to be the road for the car, I guess. But yeah, that was interesting because I thought I was a little bit more nimble than that. I thought maybe that I'd kind of been. You see, in Terminator 2, you see Sarah Connor like pumping herself up, ready for that moment where she's got the opportunity to break out of jail. I thought that maybe with my hands in those shackles, I'd be doing pull-ups. I'd be in the kind of in fighting condition, but no, obviously just this big sad sack with a big gut, like I am now, sitting at a desk in front of a mic. I should kind of take it easy and go for the waist next time. So.
I think it's an interesting bit right at the beginning there, because I actually think I don't know this for certain. I haven't actually asked Ian. I should ask him next time I see him. I think that's Ian having a bit of fun, like saying, look guys, I know there were points in Fighting Fantasy books where you died stupidly because you and you couldn't make a rational decision, and you'd still die. And this is just my little in-joke right at the beginning, just to show you that, yes, you're back in Fighting Fantasy world again. It's that. And I think I kind of like that. It's a little wink, I think, to the old school.
Absolutely.
I think with like some of the stuff that I come across as well, in a way I kind of thought if I ever do meet Ian Livingstone, I kind of both want to shake his hand and headbutt him at the same time. Just you kind of like the point.
You're not guaranteed that that's going to knock him out.
That might be the wrong thing, and he might just step to the side of the trapdoor on a beer or something.
Make sure you've got a D6 with you.
But yeah, it was the suit of armour. And I had the opportunity to put a suit of armour on. I thought, that's a brilliant idea. I'm fighting zombies. This will be the best thing in the world. And it was the worst decision you could make. And it was like, what are you doing to me? You're making me question every piece of logic that there is. So surely it would be better to be in a suit of armour. Well, actually, when you start thinking about it, some of the things you have to do in the course of the storyline in terms of drain pipes and things, it's probably not best to be wearing a suit of armour. But at the time of you're on kind of 15 health, you know you're not going to go down the flak jacket route, or suit of armour will do it. It's like, oh, well done.
It's quite funny. We got a tweet. I don't know whether you've seen the tweets, and that you can tweet from the app. And there's actually a tweet when you get the suit of armour. I think it says something like, I've just realised I can't run in a suit of armour.
Yeah, I had that one and tweeted it up, yeah.
And whenever I see that tweet, because I follow the tweets, of course, and whenever I see that tweet, I just have this little chuckle. It's like an evil laugh.
That one tweet sold it to a friend of mine. he read it. He was like, "You what?" I went, "Yeah, it's like it's not automated." Because some people complained when they saw it, they go, "Oh, is that automatically generated?" I went, "No, it's optional. It comes up." Actually, because they're kind of in a funny sense, it's got that humour from the book in there. You kind of want to share it, and I know that people that follow me, I have that sense of humour that hopefully they appreciate the fact that I've just had my head caved in by a zombie holding an axe, or I've realised that you can't run in a suit of armour, and I think that kind of social aspect of it is quite nice, because rather than sitting on the school bus and saying, "Oh, have you done this?" it's actually a kind of almost a badge of honour saying, "Yeah, I've been there. That happened, and I'm not proud of it." And there is a certain injustice where it happens. You're like, "Oh, come on." And then, like, at that point, I hadn't worked out the bookmark system. So I then went right back to the beginning. I was like, right, well, I'm not going to do that again. That wouldn't go very well for me. But yeah, it's just, as a book, it's a lot harder than I remember any of the older books being. But then I'm assuming it's aimed at, equally, the people that had those books as kids. So are going to come at it from a slightly different angle. But also at people who have been playing video games that deal with that kind of world. And I think when I was talking to Hock earlier, the one thing we noticed, actually, the very early fighting fantasy books were so heavily influenced by Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing. And now, obviously, with what's happened since then, and as Hock said, the books going out of favour of a more kind of video entertainment product. Actually, that influence on Blood of the Zombies is there throughout. It feels like you're almost playing Left 4 Dead the book, or and I said earlier, Left 4 Dead mixed with Monkey Island, is because some of the items you pick up, you think, why have I got an English to Romanian dictionary? What am I possibly going to need? And when you get the option to buy items, you're like, why would I need surgical gloves? What am I going to be asked to do? And having such a list of seemingly random items, you see some items that you think they're going to be really useful. But at the same time, those adventure games that we had in the 90s, particularly the LucasArts ones, taught you that actually even the most innocuous items may be the most useful in the longer term. But I mean, and when I met Zombie Kong, I thought, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever read in a fighting fantasy book, but it's still absolutely amazing and totally unfair. And I hate it, and it kills me more times than I care to imagine. Yeah. But, he should be. The only thing I did was a bit sad. He didn't grab the girl, took her under his arm, and you had to kind of fight to get her back. I would have quite liked that if he suddenly just climbed up to the top of some girders. It's like, roll the dice. You've jumped over a barrel. Roll the dice. You've used a giant hammer that you bought off of Boris. Roll the dice, and then eventually you just knock him off. That would have been good. But as it was, I saw the tie, and I was like, oh, brilliant. That illustration.
I need to do an update. I need to do an update for the app with that in. I think that's genius.
Well, yeah, you can have that. You can have that for free.
do you know what this conversation is? It's when you used to pick up a fighting fantasy book, flick through it, just look at a few pages and go, oh yeah, cool, and then eventually get around to reading it. So you kind of spoilt it, but you've kept it in the same. Yeah. You kind of kept the spirit of spoiling certain elements.
Yeah, well, that's what you did. You flick through the booklet, all the pictures have gone, oh, I wonder when I'm gonna meet that.
Exactly, yeah.
And so that, that's part of the fun of it.
And it was also very important to make you realise how much you'd missed. Because you could miss out huge chunks of book by going for a very direct route accidentally.
And that's a problem we have in the app world, is that because we haven't got that physical thing that you can flick through, that you don't have that sense of volume or distance, like when you read a real book. So it's.
Yeah. But that's not necessarily a disadvantage, because there's that suspense, there's that kind of a not knowing how far it goes. I don't know how many numbers there are, because I don't have the paper book. If the numbers are exactly the same as a paper book, so there's while it takes away that tactile kind of knowing, there's that unknowing, which is really nice and mysterious, I think.
Yeah, we sometimes get criticisms for our game books that they're a bit short sometimes, by basically people that never played game books in the 80s, and they're modern games players, and they just want a gaming experience. So gaming experience these days are all measured by length and how long how many hours of gameplay for some bizarre reason, rather than the quality of the gameplay. And I think part of the problem with game books is that you can have a game book that's like 1,000 sections long, but if you manage to get through it from start to finish from one path. You might only see like 200 sections of that, so it's going to feel short. Whereas if you have that as a physical book, you still know that there's like 3/4 of the book in page thickness that you still got, that you could potentially still go through. So we kind of have that that's one of the things that we try and combat all the time, and that's why we have all the achievements in there. We always want people to go and investigate all the different things, and in our other game books that we've got, game book adventures, which are quite heavy in narrative. There's a lot of sort of backstory to a lot of the characters and the places where you are, which we like people to sort of go in and investigate a bit more. So yeah.
Right, yeah.
Do you know what? I had a wonderful question then, and it's gone. That's really good going. I'm glad this isn't going out live, especially with that intro earlier.
Go on, think, Cock.
It's actually about promotion.
Okay.
And Ian Livingstone and his huge background in obviously recently in video games and as a life president for IDOS and Square IDOS. How do you get involved much with the promotion of this? Does Ian really take that on? What sort of activities are there that are different to the game book activities that you undertook to try and promote the game book bits and pieces?
Well, we've pretty much done quite a lot of the promotional side of it. I mean, obviously Ian has quite a sway, so whenever he's been interviewed by anybody, he's done lots of talks, around the world. He makes a big point of talking about us, talking about the app, and obviously that has a big influence. He's also got quite a few followers on Twitter, and which has helped. He's been tweeting a lot about the app and talking a lot about it, and he's very generously been tweeting links to like our blog page and things like that, which means our visitor count's gone up, which is great because we've got other apps as well that are advertised on that page that are nothing to do with him, and he knows that's going to help promote us, and etc. etc. So he has that kind of influence, obviously. But in terms of the actual press side of things, we've done most of that. I mean, he's obviously had a few contacts where I've got in contact through him for various things, but a lot of the stuff has been us going through our usual sort of journalists that we've done with Game Book Adventures in the past, and we've kind of built up sort of relationships with them to get various reviews and coverage and different articles here and there. So yes, it's kind of it's been on the app side of it in terms of the indie development app side, that's probably been us. But then you've got this kind of Ian with this kind of massive umbrella where anything could happen, and so that's been obviously much better than we've had with Game Book Adventures in the past, because we've not had that before. So that's kind of how we do it, but he leaves it to us mainly. He lets us do our thing. So I mean, he's a very busy chap, so he's got lots of things on.
Sure, I saw him on the Daily Politics show as well recently.
Oh, really?
I think he presents that. Yeah. That was a he looks like Andrew Neil joke.
I know the guy you mean now. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Bancy will edit that bit out of the interview.
No, he won't. What I might do is put a Seinfeld slap bass sound effect in there. I saw him on the Daily Politics show.
Is there any way for the books to go? Not in terms of obviously you're going to be doing we hear that you're going to be doing remakes or new interpretations on iOS for previous Fighting Fantasy books.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere that this could go in terms of different devices, not just Android to iOS, but maybe to Kindle or their versions of it?
Well, Kindle's already been handled. Firstly, we're on the Kindle Fire, and in fact, Blood of the Zombies is available to buy on Kindle Fire now. So people in the States, and Kindle Fire is now available in Europe, so you can get it over here. But as the actual Kindle, the little grey things with the e-ink or whatever it is, those are actually handled by a company called Worldweaver, and they've actually been available for a year or two. They've got a few Fighting Fantasy books and Lone Wolf books actually, out on that. So a little shout out for those guys. But the problem with them is that you can only get them in the States, which is a real shame because obviously Fighting Fantasy isn't as well known over there. It's better well known in Europe, and yet it's not available. So I think that's been. I know Ian has found that very frustrating. I think he's investigated that quite a lot. But it's just that Amazon just haven't gone that route to release the kind of appy stuff on the Kindle over here. So not Kindle, but we've just had announced today, actually. We just had an email through from the Barnes and Noble people that do the Nook. I don't know whether you know that. Yeah,
absolutely,
so it's coming out on the Nook in the next week or two, hopefully.
Brilliant.
We've had a few big hoops to jump through with those guys. They've had to put an age rating on it they're originally going to put an age rating of 18 plus. And we've talked them down, I think, to about 15 plus. So
we were talking earlier about the BBFC and television ratings for man-on-man or human violence and zombie violence as well. We were talking about The Walking Dead and what people could get away with and what they couldn't get away with. And it didn't for 1 minute cross my mind that maybe your books would, or your book would come under the same scrutiny, given that it's predominantly text with not very graphic, almost cartoony images inside as well. How does that manifest itself? Do you get a guideline through from Barnes and Noble, or
with the Nook situation? I think because I didn't deal with the Nook, it was my colleague Ben that dealt with that, so I don't know the full details. But I do believe it was a case of him submitting it and them reviewing it. So he submitted it with an age rating. They came back and said, no, you can't have that. It's got to be a lot higher. And we were saying, look, because I went to our local library just around the corner from me here, and they had the Blood of the Zombies book in the children's section. So I think it's just different people's takes. And Barnes and Noble, they're an American company, and I think again it's a cultural thing. I think in America, they're a lot more precious about what they present to children and that kind of thing. So it's a difficult one, really. It never really bothered me personally, because when I was a kid I just devoured anything that was gruesome and gory and horrible. Sometimes unbeknownst to my parents. It was their fault for buying the VCR player and letting me be the only one that knew how to program it. So I used to just sit and record all the late night horror films. But they didn't know that. It's a difficult one. I mean, ultimately, Blood of the Zombies, it's aimed at kind of young teen upwards. So yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. So
I think with America as well, in terms of their approach to a lot of literature, has always been a heavier element of scrutiny. I mean, if you look at the Comic Code Authority, it was set up to kind of regulate the comic industry decades ago now. But obviously, they straight away thought, well, this is what our children are reading, and they felt the need to sort of say, well, what effect can this have? What damaging effect can this have? I mean, obviously, we all experienced Fighting Fantasy as little uns, and they were aimed at us. It wasn't like we were getting access to something that should have been restricted. They were, they were suitable for us. I know. I mean, you think about some of the stuff that we used to have on TV. I'm thinking of stuff like the tripods, and I mean, even I don't know if you remember Teabag. That was a pro I was talking about the other day, which is she was just like a witch. It was creepy, and they kind of had two incarnations. And films like we had The Goonies was actually quite dark, and Monster Squad, and the 80s was a bit of a boom time really for what would have been. Oh, this is 15 plus. This is all 15 plus. But actually, if it had a bit of a sense of humour to it, or if it was just aimed just off a centre, if you could just get kind of some ingrained in there, it's a game book. It's a game book, therefore it's not a horror book. Then straight away it comes down. But I mean, you look at any bookshelf now, you look at the kind of preteens, the Twilight books sitting there. Yeah, I wouldn't. My 9-year-old daughter showed an interest in reading them. I was like, well, A, read something a bit better. B, there are themes and stuff in there that aren't appropriate for that age. But then as a parent, I'm thinking, well, I've read worse. I was reading Stephen King at 12, so I can't really criticise too much, and I should be just pleased that she's wanting to read a book, even if it is just because everybody else is reading the damn things. But yeah,
it's no worse than flicking through copies of Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious Worlds, and then asking your mother what pubic hair is because you saw because someone's describing a naked alien as having red pubic hair. But I don't know what brought us onto this.
We're just talking about what
memory stored away in your psyche.
I think every time of year it's Arthur C. Clarke, isn't it? We had we reviewed The Room from Fireproof Games, and Hock was in charge of that review, and it turned out to not be a review at all, but his alter ego, which is Dr. Ham C. Hock, just talking about having. I don't even know. Nobody understood it. And when we were at Eurogamer, we bumped into the guys that made the game, and they recognised us. They recognised the site and shared the review around. And Barry Mead said, with his arms folded, "You said nothing nice about our game."
No, what he actually said was, "You didn't say anything about the game." I did say that it was good, but it was pretty much the single most embarrassing moment of this year. Yeah.
So again, Arthur C. Clarke and you, it just seems to be the root of all problems. That's
the story behind the pubic hair thing was that I actually I don't know how you want to edit this.
The podcast about was it? Let's get a man who makes apps on to listen to you talk about red pubic hair.
What it was something like Arthur C. Clarke or The Unexplained, and I was just sitting there thumbing through it because Manimal was on, and I used to get scared by Manimal.
I used to love Manimal. That's a great show.
I found it too scary actually. I used to kind of shy away and I used to kind of like just look away and do something else because the transformations used to freak me out a little bit.
I used to try and flare my nostrils, just hoping I'd turn into a falcon.
Well, tonight, Matthew. But I asked there was this alien who's a woman in this book, and there's an eyewitness report of this naked woman abducting this man who's obviously having a rather perverted dream, and she was completely naked apart from her pubic hair, which is bright red. And I went to my mum, probably during Manimal, and I went, "Mum, what's public hair?" and she said, "It's hair under your armpits." I went, "Oh, thanks," and I just carried on as though I didn't question it anymore. And I think that was a good parental move from your mother there.
It's a bit hard. I'm definitely stealing that one.
It was a bit half-hearted, let's be honest. And the fact she didn't correct me on the fact I said public hair as well. But... So where were we again? You can edit that.
So we were talking about, obviously that was the rating. You'd asked about the ratings, and then we got on a convoluted path. So let's get back to the app itself.
This is the Bantersnatch.
You touched upon the future. I mean, what is the is it House from Hell? Was that
House
the
of Hell's
next one?
Yeah.
I remember seeing the picture tweeted up with all the little bits of paper tucked in, and so I assume that's. I mean, with an established book, do you find that's actually a little bit more pressure, or is it almost self-imposed pressure as a fan of?
And also, that's one of Jackson's, isn't it?
Yes, it's Steve's. It's our first one with Steve, so it's kind of I'm kind of feeling the same pressure, but in a different way because it's his precious, not Ian's. To be honest, now we've got Blood of the Zombies out the way, I actually feel like a quite a large weight's lifted off my shoulders a bit because we've now a lot of the decisions, like this whole thing about making it feel like Fighting Fantasy, getting the nostalgia right, getting all these kind of pieces in place to make it feel right, for so many different people coming to it. I think we've pretty much got most of those in place, and I'd like to think we've pretty much got most of those right now. So moving forward, it's literally just taking those elements and just keeping on running with them, and obviously taking each book at its own merits and doing the things that are going to work well for that particular book. So I actually feel like I'm enjoying, not that I didn't enjoy developing Blood of the Zombies because it was fantastic, but I did feel a lot of pressure with that, and now it's kind of a case of now we can just kind of go in and just be awesome with all the rest of the books. So
House of Hell is going to be the first existing book with existing artwork that you're going to be working on. How's that going to change the development process? Are you going to completely regenerate all the graphics, or are you going to get are there any stakeholders in the original book that are going to get involved other than Steve Jackson?
No, we're just going through and just going to take all the original artwork and just do our thing to it, color it up, and we'll have the retro mode again and have it all sort of the original black and white art in there as well. So we don't need to talk to the original artists about that. So that's all pretty good. So yeah, I mean the only difficult thing for us in that sense is that every artist for the Fighting Fantasy books a lot of them obviously sort of went over quite a few books, but a lot of them, there was quite a lot of different artists with a lot of different art styles. So colorizing some of those art styles are easier than others. So that'll be little hurdles to overcome over the next sort of few months as we do sort of more books. And it's a case of trying to, again, it's that nostalgia feel. Like you got a book like a House of Hell. The reason we're doing House of Hell, incidentally, is because it's my favorite Fighting Fantasy book. And as soon as we were offered them, I said, right, I want to do House of Hell. That's the second book. And the art style of the illustrations in that is so iconic. It's got such a look to it that we're going to have to colorize that and make it sort of slightly bring it into 2012. And it's that there are issues we have to overcome there, to try and get the balance right. So it still feels like House of Hell. It still feels classic, but it also looks awesome as well at the same time. So, but we're achieving that. I'd like to think we're doing that at the moment, and it's coming together pretty well. So,
from a user point of view, Blood of the Zombies won me over, I think, in about 27 seconds from hitting that title screen. That was that almost long enough.
God.
Well, I had to get through your logo first. I was like, oh, Tin Man Games, what's that? What's that all about? It's like, oh, there's a zombie. That was when the clock started proper. And then as soon as I started reading it, and as soon as I read, I think it was old school cheater mode. As soon as I read those words, I was like, this is somebody that really knows the series, and it kind of bled through the app. Anybody could have put the book out as an interactive experience, but you can tell just by reading this that it came from somebody with a vested interest in this being authentic and being the best it can possibly be.
It's genuinely exciting when you get 15 or more zombies lined up and you start rolling the dice, and then blam, 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 they start dying one after the other, and you've got a big smile on your face, and you roll the dice again, and you get that 6, and they start falling like saplings in the wind. It's beautiful. And you don't get that from the books. You don't get that from the paper books. You don't get that level of punch the air or you absolute. And I'm finding that exciting. I know I touched on it earlier. I'm finding that exciting because I like I'm not worried about the chance. I'm not fearful of the dice like I used to be. It doesn't bore me or get in the way. The dice now are part of the action. It's making the fight scenes not something I just skip through and win every time because I choose to win. It's something that I'm really engaged with, and I'm really enjoying it. And Bouncy House of Hell has got zombies in it as well as I'm sure it had loads of hunchbacks or something in it as well.
It has a hunchback in it. Yeah.
So there you go. You can pummel a hunchback to your heart's content.
Super excited.
In terms of the combat you just mentioned, a lot of credit for that needs to go to my colleague Ben, he's the technical Tin Man. He's the coder of the team. He deals with everything that I don't understand, basically. And it was brilliant because I was agonizing over how we were going to make the battles compelling and exciting, and he threw this battle system together. And I don't know whether you've played it where you've got the better guns. Have you got that far yet?
Yes, I found one in an instrument case.
So he even added little things where If you kill lots of zombies in one go, you can hear the gun rattling off really quickly. But if you only kill like 2 or 3, it just fires off individual shots, so it doesn't feel quite so satisfying. And you want that kind of mowing down of the undead. And that little touch, just adding that, I was chuffed to bits when I got the build of that from him and I played it, because he got it so perfect. Got the timing right and everything just spot on. And I think from that moment on, when we were doing the development, it very quickly everything fell into place beyond that, because that was the major thing to nail, and he nailed it. So it's just brilliant.
No, it's definitely key to the whole success of it, really. So like I said, what sells it beyond just being a paper book, and it was more than just a case of, oh, there you go, I've got it digitally. It was the fact that it feels like a game. And that's what the game books were always supposed to be. They were always supposed to be, imagine if you had a tabletop game, but in a book. And now it's like, well, imagine if you had a game book in an app. It's kind of like that. But they had to change things to make it work as a book. And again, you've had to change things.
This is the Bantersnatch.
It's a really exciting time to have it coincide with the anniversary as well. It's always like the best kind of anniversary, because very often with games and game-related items, you kind of see you'll read a post on Kotaku, 15 years ago today, the first Crash Bandicoot game came out. You think, 15 years ago, I remember that. But actually, Final Fantasy, Fighting Fantasy, 30 years, 30 years. Luckily, I wasn't old enough to buy the first one brand new, but it still puts a date on kind of how long I've sort of carried that series along. And it's weird when you're a kid. I mean, obviously Hock was saying he swapped books. I grew up in 2 farming communities. So the first one, my whole school was 36 children. And that was from 4 to 16. So we didn't really have that there. It was kind of a very isolated. I went to the library, got a book, brought it home. And so for me, I never really saw the popularity of it. It was just, I went in and almost like, well, there's an Asterix book, there's your Tintin book, and there's your Fighting Fantasy. And they were the 3 that I just read endlessly. And didn't have friends that read them, didn't know anybody that read them. And it was only really in sort of once I moved out and I kind of mourned the loss of my own books that people started saying, oh yeah, I remember them. And now obviously it started to come around again. It's just great being able to connect in a more social way through Twitter in particular. And just people saying, oh yeah, I remember those books. I remember doing this. I remember that. I had this favourite. I had that favourite. People sending me photos. They've opened the drawers and they've got a couple of books in there that they always have with them. And it's kind of humbling to have a shared history of something. And obviously, I mean, I guess for you, it's a boon in both senses, because you've got an app that people are kind of really enjoying and cherishing because of that nostalgia, but also the bleeding effect that has of actually the games that you've been producing are finding a new audience of people that probably wouldn't have thought about it originally.
Yeah. I mean, for starters, it's just an absolute privilege to be given the opportunity to do this. I sometimes have to pinch myself a little bit. And it's just it's wonderful in so many ways, like meeting, guys like yourself who obviously have a lot of love from your childhood, and it's, it means quite a lot from your past, but it's also just as great, seeing, like, I was at the London Comic Con, the MCM Expo, a couple of weekends ago exhibiting, and just watching kids come along. I had a stand, we've got like an iPad stand up with a Fighting Fantasy logo on it, and watching kids just suddenly rush up and they look at me and they go, what is this? And I go, it's a reading app. And they go, oh. I said, do you like reading? No. I say, okay, right, don't go away. I said, do you like role-playing games? Yeah. And I say, how do you play them? Do you like playing Warhammer, or do you like playing on your Xbox? And, and they'd say, oh, I like playing Warhammer or Xbox or whatever. And you go, right, okay, so let's break it down. I said, this is kind of like the same thing, but you have to do a little bit of reading. I said, not a lot of reading, But actually, what happens is you go through the adventure. You're making the story up as you go along, and you're rolling dice and you're doing stuff and you're playing a game. And they were like, you could just suddenly see them, their brain kind of just like the gears clicking into place, and they sort of sit and play it for a couple of minutes, and 10 minutes later they're still there with their mate, and they're just going, yeah, I just killed 5 zombies. That's brilliant. And that, for me, it just lifts my soul, because it's just like it's like a mirror through to the 10-year-old me stood there.
But you can feel that. Well, I can feel that, but you can feel that when you're playing it as well. You know exactly how they feel when those zombies are falling, and to have that connection with something that you've created must be mind blowing. And also, while you think you're in a privileged position to have worked with Ian Livingstone and on this book, you've orchestrated that as well. And I think you've got to give yourself a lot of credit of having the dedication to keep at the game books, keep at the series that you've already done.
This is the Bantersnatch.
You know, when people have been influenced by the fighting fantasy books because their own titles of their own the books that they've created themselves, always have a lot of ofs or of the.
Oh man, tell me about it. I'm always trying to mix it up to try and get rid of that of the thing.
You can't. That's part of the family, isn't it? You can't.
Like, our first book was called An Assassin in Orlandes, right? And I was so chuffed to bits with that because it sounded so not like anything else. but then the second book, The Siege of the Necromancer, and it all kind of sort of went downhill from there, really.
But it's keeping it on thread. City of Thieves, House of Hell, Caverns of the Snow Witch, Island of the Lizard King, Temple of Terror. I'm actually going to stop there.
Yeah, it's difficult. You got to say what it is, really, in the simplest. And on the places like the App Store, it's really important as well to get that simple 2 or 3, maybe 4 worded name. Because sometimes people buy things, on a whim just for the title. So,
well, while we're talking about the App Store, I'll just bring back to a point that you touched on earlier about criticism of pricing. Now, I wrote an article recently where I basically said that too many apps are being put out too cheaply, and as such, not so much that it's affecting profits, that's not really my concern, but actually the standard of some apps is worth more than the 69 pence that is almost deemed as that's the only fair price. Anything more than that, that's too expensive. I don't want to be paying that. And obviously we were talking about The Room, that came out at I think $3.99 again, and a lot of criticism, or pretty much the only criticism I've heard of that game was, for this price it was too short. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Think, well, how much of an experience have you got for your money? And I think that's the same with these adventure game books. It depends on what you go into. If you expect something where you can sit for 5 seconds, throw a colourful animal at another colourful animal, and then see some sort of physics-based falling items, you're never going to be happy. I was trying not to be too specific there, but there are.
It's okay. We said Erectus earlier. I think we can say angry.
But there are. I mean, they're even not just Angry Birds. There are.
You're right, though.
Amounts of people jumping on the thing, saying, "Oh, look, there's a pig, and there's a frog, and there's a dog with its tongue hanging out," and it's almost become swamped with that. And then you've got the pressure of, do you go free for a little while just to make it work? And actually, I think that's the biggest, most damaging thing to the kind of credibility of some incredibly good apps that are going out. They kind of feel they need to be chucked out as cheaply as possible just to be able to sell. And I think you only got to look at, there was the Final Fantasy app that, if you had the whole thing, was I think £20 for the whole game. The World Ends Review was $12.99. Again, a solid, full, complete game of the same quality on a console would cost you 3 times that.
Yeah.
And with apps, it's almost like people sort of expect it to either be free or 69p, and anything beyond that. So I assume you've had a bit of a backlash on that side from your earlier comment.
Yes. Can I just take a time out for a second? Is that all right?
Yeah,
just very, very quickly.
Yeah. You're fine.
I will be 2 minutes.
How do you think it's going, Hock?
Who's Hock?
Shut up, you.
Let's play a game. Hang on a minute, because As you know, when you stopped at my house recently,
I left my underpants in your bedroom.
Apart from that, I have fighting fantasy books, and I've also got fighting fantasy books in storage as well, which I was supposed to collect today, but didn't happen. Let's play a little game.
Okay.
So I'm just going to flick through randomly. We're playing House of Hell. The reason why I know so much about House of Hell is because I've got it in my hand.
So you were guessing there were hunchbacks in it. What? Holding it?
No, I don't remember. I mean, I remember from other books, but not from House of Hell. I actually remember the Hunchback, but I was looking for zombies and there were so. The door opens and you enter a kitchen. The room is empty and immaculately tidy, with all the knives, pots, and pans hanging in neat rows along the walls. A double sink is set under the window, next to a large cooker and fridge. This is not me describing my flat. A great square table stands in the centre of the room. There are 2 doors. One leads outside and the other looks like a pantry door. A large bunch of keys lies on top of the cooker. Do you want to try the back door outside? Or to try the other door? Or to grab the bunch of keys on the cooker?
I'll grab the bunch of keys on the cooker.
Turn to 148. This is a major
Is the
spoiler.
cooker going to suddenly light and I'm going to catch fire?
You take the stopper off the vial and sniff... Oh, that's not right. you pick up... Genuine mistake. You pick up the bunch of keys and start to through them. You scream loudly and drop the keys on the floor, for they are red hot.
I knew it.
And you have severe... All right, so... And
Hey, I'm back, by the way, just to let you know.
All right, good. We were just discussing how well the interview was going.
Oh, wait, you're making me play House of Hell by proxy.
Nice.
I picked up the keys and burnt myself.
And Snatch.
This is the Bantersnatch.
We were basically asking you if you'd had any experiences of, the negative side of the pricing structure.
Yeah, so it's a difficult one, the pricing structure. It's a bit of a pain in the arse, to be honest. So the answer to that is, I still don't we've been on the App Store and floating around various App Stores for quite a while now, and it's still hard to know how to price something because, we're game books are a niche product, right? They're not mass consumption. They're not going to sell millions and millions of copies because you have to do some reading. You have to be kind of in that way inclined to be able to do these kind of things. So pricing it too low means that you get a limited amount of sales at a low cost, and you actually don't make any money. And you don't actually cover your costs even. Price it too high, and then you're blocking out a whole market of people that might come to it in a casual way. So this has always been a bit of a delicate area for us. So what we've always done from the start, and it was actually the whole not getting the Fighting Fantasy license in the first place. We kind of thought to ourselves, what we're going to do? We're going to try and become the premier game book people on, new digital devices. That's going to be our aim. So we knew that we didn't have a brand because Fighting Fantasy had been given to somebody else, and various other game book licenses had gone to other people. And we were never going to be able to compete with Need for Speed or Angry Birds or The Sims or anything like that. So it was always about, well, we need to make the most of our niche. So we knew we sort of were really honest with ourselves. We thought we're never going to become millionaires overnight out of this, like some app developers think they're going to become. We got a small market, so what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we make a bloody amazing product, and we price it to basically make money back for ourselves, judging on the size of the amount of people that might potentially buy it. And it kind of worked out okay. That's kind of how things have gone. So we've kind of ended up pricing ourselves at around $4.99 American dollars, which I think. Is it right? Is that £2.99 or is that £1.99? I don't know.
I think it's about £2.99. I think.
Yeah. So it's that kind of which is expensive for an app, of course, but the important thing for us is it's cheap for a book. And essentially, we're not competing with 99 or free apps. We're competing with books because we are essentially a book, and we're not only a book, we're a book with a gaming trend, and we're adding in gaming production values to what is, seen as maybe quite a dry product. So we've always kind of stood by our sort of $4.99 sort of price point. And trust me, there's been many times where I've kind of looked at the sales that we've had on particular days and just gone, oh my God, I think we're just going to have to crash it. Like, we're just going to have to sort of just follow the sheep and go down to the lowest possible. But I'm so glad that we haven't, because what's ended up happening is we've kind of found our place. And I think if people want to read game books on digital devices, they've ended up, being happy to pay like a couple of bucks more, a cup of coffee more, as I put it, to do that, because they understand that what we're providing is something that isn't mass market. It's not, it's not going to sell tons and tons of copies, because it's quite a geeky endeavor, like you were saying, at your school, you were the only person reading these books, right? So, and that's the thing. It's it's not. We knew that we were never going to get massive sales. So I think we've been quite good so far at keeping kind of at the top end of the price point. And I think it's about right for us ultimately, because we make just enough money to keep going. And things have progressed, and I genuinely believe that I do. Well, I hope that people can see the amount of love and attention that goes into our products, to the point where people are saying to themselves, you know what, Tin Man Games, yes, they're $3 more than I'd normally pay for an app, but you know what, these guys, they really care about what they're doing. They're not just throwing it out there, and it's not like a throwaway product. This is something that they've invested a lot of time into. And we're just two guys, right? By the way, we're not like we haven't got like a big studio. We're just two guys and a bunch of contractors around the world that we just kind of do this thing. So that's kind of where I am on that. It's a difficult one, but and we do have little crash sales now and again. We go down to like $1.99, or we've even done a dollar sale here and there. And what we tend to find is you get a spike in sales, but generally the actual sales numbers go down very quickly to what we would get if they were a higher price anyway. So so that's where we are.
Yeah, I just think it seems such a shame when you get kind of a great product automatically dismissed because of a price point. And I always just think, well, there are terrible console games that people will pay £40 for. Without even thinking about it, and then they'll bemoan it out as well. Oh, I only got. I mean, you take Call of Duty. If you're not interested in multiplayer, you've got 5 hours of gameplay in a £45 retail release, and you just think, actually, from what I've had from Blood of the Zombies, I've had the game since the day it launched. I'm pretty sure it was the following day, and I've probably played it every day for at very least half an hour a day. I mean, that value has just stacked up and stacked up and stacked up, and I'm getting that investment, and that to me is a good investment, because it's a product that, like I say, if I'd have bought the book, it would have cost me more than $3.99 anyway. I'd have had to carry it around with me. I'd have had to have had pencil and dice to do its full capacity. As it is, it's a quality product from a series that I already had a vested interest in seeing more of, in a way that's incredibly convenient and suited to my needs. And, for a few quid, I'd spend more than that on a magazine without even a shadow of doubt. And I'd probably get far less interest in reading that and flicking through the pages backwards and forwards until I find the page it doesn't have 100 adverts on.
And you know what it's like. The people with the negative feedback are always the noisiest. They're always, and it's always you always get that kind of snowball effect of people retweeting bad news and so on or whatever. It's not while criticizing your price point is not bad news. If someone if there's a general sense that it's a 5 or a 4-star review on iTunes, someone comes along with a 1-star because they're peeved at the price point, then it stands out. A bit like the TripAdvisor syndrome that you tend to get.
Yeah.
And going back to your point about hoping that you feel as though the books reflect the love that you guys are putting in there. As soon as I took the recommendation and downloaded it and played it, you felt like it was developed by people who love the content and love the medium and love the books, and I've got a good feeling about the history and the market and those people who've grown up with it, but also it being accessible to new market, the user interface being better for a new market, for people who are not familiar with something which is a bit more clunky or requires you to cheat your way through it. And I get that sense of love. I get that sense of TLC. What I want from you guys now is, as well as the books that you're going to be producing, is to get all the little short stories that they used to do in Warlock magazine, 11 or 12 or 13 of them. There were some tiny little amazing stories. If you can get hold of those as DLC, dare I mention the name? That would be utterly awesome.
Well, House of Hell actually, I think, was one of those.
It was a short one, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So there, we're doing one for you straight away. Look, there we go.
There you go.
So
hey, thanks for the request.
Not only are you getting the Warlock story, you're getting like another 300 sections added on it.
So the extended cut version
with added Hunchback. That's right.
Exactly, with added Hunchback.
Well, I think we should be wrapping it up there. Cool. Just obviously, thank you very, very much for speaking to us, and hopefully, when your next one's out, you'll come back and talk to us again, and we'll catch up and see how you're getting on, and we'll be able to give you some feedback on this one as well. Probably sit and play it, and just play it while talking to you, and just give us instant feedback for you. It'd be like a 5-star iTunes review, but audio and constantly saying the words Final Fantasy instead of Fighting Fantasy. Other than that, it'll be absolutely fine.
And also, it'd be terribly sinister as well, in equal measure, while we read it while you're just listening in silence.
To be honest, I'll be quite happy. I've drunk half a bottle of wine while we've been chatting, so I'm quite happy with that. I just sit here and just, I might buy some cigars or something.
We'll definitely schedule it. Do you have a rough idea of when you're hoping to have a release window, or is it just when it's done, or? Yeah,
so we're kind of going mid-December, but we're, like I said, we've got quite a lot of projects coming in. Like we've got some massive other game book license news coming up soon. So.
Well, we'll have to cover that as well then.
Yeah, so we've got some other stuff buzzing around the ether. And plus, we've got another Game Book Adventures. We've got our 9th Game Book Adventures title coming out as well. So, we're trying to get that out the door as well. So, it's all go.
It must be kind of the best case scenario for you guys now, because obviously you're doing what you wanted to do originally, but with the added bonus of now having the licenses that you wanted as well. And now I presume, now you've sort of established yourself as how you can handle a license well, that is going to open up doors a lot easier than just sort of going up to people and saying, we make these apps and we'd like to handle it. So obviously now you've got what can be done with somebody else's license. Because obviously your own, you can kind of, from what I've seen of book 3 of your guys' ones, it kind of going backwards from Blood and Zombies, there are a lot of elements of that still, the design ethic is still there and it's still as enjoyable, but just obviously from a different origin source. And so I'm kind of enjoying that, just to kind of experience something new rather than something nostalgic. But it still has that pang of, and obviously that's because of where your influences have come from originally. But now, obviously, hopefully, it's a bright future it's a shiny future for the Tin Man.
Absolutely. Apart from the point when Osborne starts knocking on your door asking you to recreate their god awful choose your own adventure books.
They weren't awful. Are you referring specifically to the one I've been talking about on Twitter this week? The best one they ever made.
Which one was that?
The Magic Path. The Magic Path, illustrated by a guy called Frank Bolle. it was one of their junior ones. It wasn't like the little, because they had the white ones, which were the smaller format.
Yeah.
And then they had the larger format red ones that were for the junior readers. And this one, you went on an adventure on your bike, and you could have a BMX or a chopper or a regular bike. You didn't choose, but each character was on a different type of bike. And on this magical path, you could go on the following: fight the Black Knight, meet Merlin, meet a dragon, go to a Camelot, see Buffalo Bill's Wild West Rodeo Show, meet a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
No.
And in there, I've actually tweeted this up as well. There is one of the illustrations is King Arthur riding a chopper, which out of any book, I mean, Steve Jackson hasn't got that level of imagination. I couldn't imagine that. The one page he took out of House of Hell is like there's a portal to Arthurian era, and somebody accidentally roll a dice. You push a bike through the portal. You look as King Arthur comedically cycles down way up.
Oh, look! There's a hunchback riding a chopper. How about that?
I need to get the license for that game book. I don't care about the whole rest of the series. I just need that one game book. I'm going to contact them tomorrow.
I will send you the information. It is a great. I've actually got the book. It's on the other side of the room to me. I found it in a charity shop, and because at the time. It was the one thing that kind of, this is before all the Final Fantasy stuff came back. It was a couple of years ago. And I just thought, I remember these books. And I read the back and I was like, I remember reading this one. And then I thought, I don't remember it being this much awesome shoved into about 80 pages. It's almost like they went, well, we don't know anything about Arthurian legends. We know the characters. Let's just put them in. Let's just have a magical path where everything can happen. It was genius. So, yeah. So anyway, right. So obviously, shiny future for the Tin Man, thanks to all the polish you're putting onto your products.
Hopefully, yes. Fingers crossed.
And we'll look forward to speaking to you in the near future then about your next endeavours and projects and things. And we'll build up some more praise for you.
Oh, thanks,
we'll
guys.
Have like a collection jar of praise.
It means a lot. It's nice to it's nice to chat to people that actually understand it. That's really nice, you know. So it's all good.
Excellent.
I like it.
Have you got any final words, Hock, before I terminate this Bantersnatch?
No. Well, what was in the we had a little pre-meeting before the interview, you see, because we're professional-like, and we were like, well, we only be like 15 minutes, you know. We finished afterwards, and how are you recording this? Are we sounding okay? All right, cool. And we started talking about other things, but I'm just it was a really exciting evening actually for me. I had a really really great giggle, and I'm really excited for your future work. I'm just
cool.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm just been a great evening. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Well,
I hope we can just jump up a little bit, just keep the momentum of the vibe going, and momentum of the hype going a little bit on our side. We don't get thousands and thousands of people visiting the site or listening to the shows, but we get a few, and hopefully we can just keep that trickling along for you, because we really want to see more from you. It's great.
Oh, thank you. I mean, to be honest, like, just chatting to you two guys, you obviously understand Fighting Fantasy and getting what we do and saying the nice things. That means a lot. That kind of, it gives us a kickstart. Comments like that. So it's all good.
Cool. Excellent. Right. Well, I think the most appropriate thing would be now to say, obviously, thank to everybody for listening. If you're not following us, follow us on Twitter at We Are The Lolocaust with the letter R instead of the word R, because of Twitter restricting how many letters we can use. If you want to follow me, I'm at Bouncybhall with HR to second B. Dr. Hamhock over there is at Dr. Hamhock, I assume.
I don't think I'm following him.
Well, I wouldn't worry too much. It's not great content, but it is DRHAMHOCK.
And if they want to follow you and find out more about your products, it would be
at Tin Man Games, all one, TINMANGAMES.
Yeah, it's like Sesame Street here tonight. So there we go. This show was brought to you by the letters F and F, and with that we bid you adieu. Goodbye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
I was going to do that, and you got in there before me. Brilliantly. Right. Well, there we go. Look at that. We've got an interview.
Bantersnatch. Bantersnatch.